Hi, my name is Antonine Allysa.
And my name is Ashafa Munandar. So today we're going to be presenting our paper that is titled Empirical Analysis of Economic Growth. Economic growth is the increase in the value and output of goods and services calculated by a country over a certain period of time based on several indicators, such as unemployment or poverty reduction. Economic growth is an important indicator for a country to assess the result of economic development. Through this research, we aim to see the comparison of economic growth between developed and developing countries. For this purpose, we take the European Union as a sample for developed countries and countries in Asia as a sample for developing countries. This research takes a period of 25 years back from 2019, aiming to see how economic growth in the era of development of science and technology is very massive and rapid. Here's our list of literature review for this research. This study uses the ordinary least square method to prove the relationship between the contribution of state wealth to annual economic growth. Here is our model for the regression.
According to Mankiw, Whale, and Romer in 1992, economic growth has a positive correlation with the level of investment, while it has a negative correlation with the initial GNI and labor growth. We will now describe the results of the regression table 3, 4, and 5 in MRW paper in 1992 with a new dataset for comparative purposes. Table 1 represents test for unconditional converge. The regression results show that the initial GNI coefficient of the three subgroups is negatively significant at the 1% level. It indicates that there is a convergence without the influence of other variables. This is still in line with Table 3 in the MRW paper despite the different time period. This shows that economic convergence persists over time with a decreasing value. That statement supports convergence as there is a tendency for underdeveloped regions to catch up from rich regions because their economic growth is very impressive. Table 2 is the result of the regression by adding the variables of the level of investment and the amount of labor growth with depreciation to see the effect on economic growth. The coefficient for the initial GNI still shows a negative number with a decrease in value for all countries. Compared with the Mankiw paper, there is a difference in the variables of the level of investment and the amount of labor growth and depreciation, which they are not significant to economic growth. This indicates that there are other variables that have more influence on economic growth in developed countries, especially in the European Union. Table 3 of this study refers to Table 5 of the Mankiw's paper. It adds the schooling variable, which contains proceed data on the average year of schooling in a country. With the addition of the labor variable, the coefficient value for GNI at the beginning of the period decreases, which means it's in accordance with the Mankiw's paper. The results showed differences where the human capital variable in the two groups of countries is insignificant, but significant for the world group. This shows that there are other variables that are more significant for economic growth in the European Union and several developing countries in Asia outside of the study. In Table 4, the regression results also show similarities with Table 6 MRW, where the coefficients obtained from developing countries are similar to others.
The focus of this paper is to compare the paper of Mankiw, Whale, and Romer with new dataset. The data we use refers to the period from 1994 to 2019. In general, the regressions result for initial GNI per employee variables, investment per GNI, school and employee growth, and depreciation can be significantly correlated with annual GDP growth. The weakness of the MRW paper is that it deals with human capital, specifically schools rather than higher education. The regression results show that secondary education is not as important as it was when Mankiw, Romer, and Well published it. This is the only limitation I encountered while looking through the MRW documentation.